Hey friends, welcome back to another video and happy new year. I'm really excited to be filming today's video, and you can see I have a stack of books here with me because I wanted to talk to you all about my favorite books of 2024. Last year was a really good reading year for me, and I think I managed to read 97 books in total, which it's not ever my goal to read 100 books a year, but this year it got quite close to that, so I'm very happy with it. And yeah, I wanted to share with you some of these books because they are incredible. I'm also filming right now in my husband's family cafe, and they've kindly allowed me to use their upper floor in the building to film because a bit of a life update, we are moving again. And since there's nowhere really to film right now because of boxes and packing, they have kindly allowed me to use their very cute cafe. By the way, guys, if you want to see a moving vlog or a series of moving and setting up my new bookshelf and things like that, then please let me know. I've also got a list of honorary mentions because if there's one thing that I really don't like about myself is that I'm really indecisive. I find it really difficult to make any sort of decision, so you can imagine how torturous it was trying to come up with a list of 10 favorite books, so I had to mention some honorary mentions. Anyways, I hope you really enjoyed today's video, and I can't wait to kick off this year with my favorites from last year. My husband also quickly made me some bubble tea because he knows how much I love bubble tea and it's so delicious. But without further ado, I'm going to be sharing some b-rolls, and then I'll probably do a voiceover of me talking about each of these books and why they made it to this list. Hey friends, it's voiceover Ahya now, but I'm really excited to present to you all today 6 honorary mentions and then the top 10 of 2024. In no particular order, the first honorable mention is Keeper of the Lost Cities, and to this I gave the superlative the series that I wish I discovered sooner. I came across this series earlier this year and I spent so much time in this world. I fell in love with Sophie, our main character, and the world building, as well as Fitz and Keith, of course. I think I reached like book 7 and I haven't finished it yet, but whilst this isn't the most perfect middle grade series out there, it is one where you feel so much for the characters and you become so invested in these characters by the end of like 5 or 6 books. I think I would have loved this book if I'd found it sooner, perhaps around secondary school time when I was falling in love with worlds like Percy Jackson, but it was a world that I found myself wanting to return to again and again, even though the books are really long. Next up is Yours from the Tower. This is the book that just kept making me smile. It had the sweetest romances, and I love that all the books were written in letter format, so it's an epistolary format novel. I love these kind of novels because I feel like letters always offer a very intimate window into a character. It was so romantic and I loved the character dynamics and the friendships that these girls shared. I don't think it gets much love, so if you're looking for a really sweet romance to read, then Yours from the Tower by Sally Nichols is definitely one that I want to recommend. Third is Honeybees and Distant Thunder. This is the book that filled my heart with music. One of you actually recently mentioned that you picked this book up because I mentioned it before, and I'm so happy that you did. I hope you enjoy it. It's a Japanese contemporary novel all about these different students who are incredibly gifted and talented when it comes to playing the piano. They join this competition and it's all about their experiences and the stress of a music competition, their love for music, and how it connects them all together as well. It reminded me of all the days that I was a part of the orchestra, and I don't currently have a piano in this flat, but it made me long for one, and it actually sent me on this huge spiral where I just listened to so much classical music for a while after reading this book. Another honorary mention is by Ash, Oak and Thorn. This probably comes as no surprise to you all because I mentioned it so frequently throughout this year. This is the book that stole my heart with its tenderness and wonder of nature. Because it's a middle grade novel, it's super accessible, but it presents nature in all its glory in such a wholesome and whimsical way, and I loved being able to spend some time with these little characters. One of my favourite kinds of books to read is when the books have gorgeous descriptions of nature, and this book definitely had plenty of moments where I was just highlighting and annotating as well. Next up, I have another series, and this is one that I recently completed. It's the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. This is the series that was filled with sparkling magic and swoon-worthy romance. I initially picked book 1 up because I wanted to read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and I'd heard that it was a good idea to read Caraval before picking that series up. But I'm so glad that I picked it up because I had a great time. It was really romantic, and I found myself rooting for all of these characters. It felt very whimsical to me, and I loved the magical elements coming through. Book 3 Finale was my first book that I read officially in 2025, and I think I gave it 4 stars, so I was very happy with this series overall. And last but not least, the final honorary mention is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. This is the book that made me appreciate life. I personally really love books that make me reflect on life and reflect on the significance of life, and this book definitely did that to me. The fact that we follow these 6 astronauts and cosmonauts, they're floating above Earth, orbiting Earth 16 times in a 24-hour span, and seeing them reflect upon how small life is and yet how grand it is, with all of these different interweaving, connecting episodes and characters that sort of create this big tapestry. It was really beautiful and mesmerizing to read about. Now for the Big 10. Interestingly, I noticed that these books start from super cozy and heartwarming and then get progressively deeper and darker, but I think it just goes to show that some of my all-time favorite books always have something that really dig deeper and bring out lots of big feelings within me. So these are ranked from 10th to 1st, but in 10th place, I decided to pick Garlic and the Vampire. This is the book that is the epitome of coziness, and it brought me much comfort. I've talked so much about this particular book that it's probably no surprise to you all by now that this has made it into the top 10 books of 2024, but this was my favourite graphic novel because it had everything that I was looking for in a cozy fantasy story. It actually took me by surprise because I didn't think that I'd care so much for some vegetables, but the premise of Garlic having to overcome her fears in order to confront the new vampire that's arrived, and the idea of these vegetables tending to their own little farms, it was so comforting and adorable to read about. The sweet friendship between Garlic and Carrot in particular really melted my heart, and on top of that, the art is phenomenal. The colour palette is so cozy and autumnal, and there wasn't a moment in this graphic novel that I wasn't having a good time. In 9th place, we have Miss Newbury's List, and this is a book that physically squeezed and warmed my heart. Every spring, I have this huge desire to read romance books, and specifically books set during Regency England. So when I read this book earlier this year during springtime, it was everything that I was looking for. The book starts when Rosalind is supposed to be getting married to a duke that her family would like her to marry, although she's not in love with him. And so in the countdown to her wedding, she decides to fulfill a list of 10 things that she's always wanted to do ever since she was young. But then she meets Charlie, who is her best friend's cousin, and he offers to help her to accomplish everything on that list. So you can imagine the beautiful adventure that the two go on, the swoon-worthy romance between them as the book progresses, and it's a clean romance that genuinely squeezed my heart in the best way possible. And I remember there was a scene that even made me cry, so yes, this had to be on the top 10 list. In 8th place, we have 10,000 Stitches by none other than Olivia Atwater. This is a book that made me dream of whimsical forests and fairies, and it's another book that I've mentioned so frequently on my channel lately, but it's everything that I was looking for in an Olivia Atwater novel. She wrote one of my all-time favourite books to this day, which is Half of Soul, and whilst I still love that book a little bit more than this one, 10,000 Stitches was just as whimsical and cozy and romantic. You follow follow Effie, who is a housemaid, and Lord Blackthorn, who's a fairy, and he helps her, or offers to help her, to win Mr. Ashbrook's heart in return for Effie stitching 10,000 stitches onto Lord Blackthorn's jacket. This was another swoon-worthy read and a very feel-good one as well. You guys might know this about me already, but I automatically love a book more if it takes place in a forest of some sort, and Blackthorn Manor is essentially a moss-covered forest, so I was of course eating that all up, and all those gorgeous descriptions of meadows and ivy and butterfly was so magical. In 7th place we have a classic. We have The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and this is a book that I'll forever associate with English spring. This isn't the only classic on this list, but it's the first one so far, and this year I decided to try and read more classics, and I'm really happy with the ones that I did manage to pick up because I found lots of new favourites. The Secret Garden was one of the middle grades that I hadn't read yet, and I fell in love with it. This spring I was determined to pick it up and finish it, and I had the most wonderful time. The entire story had a wonderful spring-like message to it. It was regenerative and soothing and magical, and I feel like Frances Hodgson Burnett really managed to bottle up the days leading up to English spring so poetically. I'm truly so happy that I finally got around to reading it this year, and it's one that I'd like to reread each spring. In 6th place we have The Easy Life in Kamosari and its sequel, Kamosari Tales Told at Night. These books made me long to run to the Japanese mountains and rewatch Ghibli movies all over again. I don't remember how I came across this series because I don't think I've ever seen anyone talk about these books before, but I'm really glad that I fell upon them because I feel like they capture so much of what I love to read about. In terms of aesthetics, think Ghibli movie. We follow our main protagonist Yuki, who writes almost diary-like entries of his experience as he's sent to a remote Japanese mountain village. His mother sends him there to join a forestry training program, and she does this because Yuki has no idea what he wants to do after high school. The nature descriptions of the Japanese countryside, the small town coziness, and also the quirky villager relationships that Yuki develops is really entertaining to read about. It has a very humorous, sometimes crude side to it that I wasn't actually expecting when I picked it up, and it read very similarly to The Growing Pains of Adrian Mole, but it also has a very whimsical side to it because of its speculative moment where the story explores the idea of a magical folk tale that's intertwined with it. By the end of book 2, I became so attached to these characters, and they all just felt so alive to me, as though I could really go and visit Kamotari village in Japan and feel at home there. I even think I cried at the end of book 2, so yeah, this series has a very special place in my heart. Now we finally reached the top 5 books of last year, and in 5th place we have The Wishing Game by Meg Schafer. This is the book that brought back that magical childhood nostalgia. This kind of surprises me that it made it to the top 5 books this year, because I remember feeling a little bit hesitant about it as I was reading it, but then by the end of the book I was so hooked, and I ended up having the most touching experience the further the book progressed. It follows Lucy, who adored a book series called Clock Island as a child, so when the author of Clock Island announces that he's written a brand new book, but there's only one copy of the manuscript in the world, a competition takes place and Lucy joins it. I really loved that it was magical realism, and I also loved how lyrically the island was presented in this story. The house setting was by the ocean, and it was very strange and cozy at the same time, and whilst it addressed some more difficult topics as well, the book did have a peculiar magical charm to it, a Willy Wonka-like charm that made it feel incredibly cozy at times too. Of course, I fell in love with the romance subplot in the story as well, and I couldn't stop thinking about it after I'd finished reading it. In 4th place we have The Picture of Dorian Gray, and this is the book that's become one of my all-time favourite classics. This is another classic like The Secret Garden that I'd been putting off for a while, and whilst I did try reading it a couple of times as well, it wasn't until this autumn that I properly picked it up, and you guys, I couldn't stop thinking or talking about this book for a good few weeks afterwards. The entire time I was reading it, I was gushing about how amazing today was to my husband, who very patiently listened to me. But I love books with interesting concepts, especially if they have a moral twist to it. So in this book, you follow Dorian, who becomes enamored with the idea of remaining young and beautiful forever. So whilst on the outside Dorian remains handsome and youthful, there's a portrait of him hidden away that perhaps suggests something more sinister is going on beneath the facade. There was so much to think about in this book, especially for its size, and it had a tremendous impact on my reading life. It's very hard not to recall the iconic imagery of Dorian Gray once you've read it, so I couldn't be happier that I found a new favourite classic. Drum roll please, we have made it to the top 3, and in 3rd place, this might shock you, we have Fourth Wing. This is the book that had me in a chokehold and reminded me why I love fantasy so much. Many of you know that I adore fantasy, but as some of you already know, I don't enjoy reading spicy novels. So whilst I really enjoy reading romantasy novels, sometimes it can be a bit difficult because so many of them are super spicy. So I think this book surprised me and also lots of you as well, because I enjoyed it so much. But I didn't want to stop reading this book once I picked it up, and I genuinely stayed up all night to finish it, which is a sign of a good book. I fell head over heels in love with the world building, the dragons, the magic system, and the characters themselves were just flying off the page for me. The pacing made the book unstoppable, and the chemistry between Violet and the other characters was phenomenal. I was really hesitant about this book at first because of how hyped it was, but I had a really good time reading it, and I still haven't read Iron Flame yet because I'm kind of saving it, but I can't wait to pick it up. And if it's anything like Fourth Wing, I know that I'll just need to set aside an entire weekend just to read it because I won't be able to do anything else. Okay, this is the penultimate book. In 2nd place, we have If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is the book that made me obsess over each character's fate. This penultimate book is one that I've placed as my 2nd favourite book of the year, but it's the only book out of all the books that I've mentioned in this video so far that I felt like even drew close to number 1, so it was a really tight battle between the two of them. And had I not read the book that I've placed as number 1, this book definitely would have taken that spot. Dark academia has proven itself to be a subgenre that almost always works out for me, and 2024 really stands out to me as a year that I became obsessed with a lot of dark academia novels. And I think one of the best ones that I picked up was If We Were Villains. You follow Oliver Marks, who is one of 7 students studying Shakespeare exclusively at this elite arts college, but he's just served 10 years in jail for a murder that he may or may not have committed. So on the day that he's released from prison, Oliver goes to explain to the detective what really happened all those years ago. I love so many things about this book that I might as well just give a list of the things that I adored about it. The mystery element was eerie and gave me goosebumps. The academic setting and close-knit friendship made me want to go back to uni and crave an intimate group of friends who share the same passion as me. And the incredible atmosphere surrounding the castle and the campus, as well as their obsessive love for Shakespeare, made me in turn become obsessed with Shakespeare as well. And like I said, had I not read the other book, If We Were Villains would very likely have taken the top spot. Now for the creme de la creme, the book of the year for me. In 1st place, we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is the book that I was in awe of the entire time I was reading it. This book rewired my entire brain as I was reading it, and so it inevitably became my favourite book of 2024. I love books that make me be in awe of the author, in awe of their genius storytelling, their craft, and feeling that sense of wonder and privilege to be reading such a book for the very first time. And Babel was exactly that for me. I couldn't believe what I was reading, and I just know that even if I go to reread it again, I'll be able to glean so many things that I didn't pick up the first time round, and it'll be a totally wonderful experience again. Robin, who is our main character, much like Oliver from If We Were Villains, has a very special place in my heart just because I became so attached to them, and everything that they went through became so intertwined with my own emotions as I was reading. This book broke me, and I actually listened to it via audiobook as well as reading it physically. But as I was listening to the audiobook, I was doing some of my picture book work, and I remember sobbing so violently that I physically couldn't focus any longer on my work, and that was it for me that day. I had to take the rest of the day off to just calm down. If that doesn't tell you how much I love this book, I don't know what will. In Babel, you follow Robin, who enters Oxford University's prestigious translation institution. This book handles so many different things that it's hard to narrow down really what I loved about it, but it deals with colonialism, racism, the pursuit of knowledge, and the things that people will sacrifice to gain knowledge. It deals with academia and toxic culture in academia. It deals with language and friendship and complex family relationships. And that period of time, I think it was February when I picked up Babel, is just so vivid in my memory and so defined by my experience of reading this, because it is quite a hefty, chunky book. If you haven't read this yet, I really hope you are able to pick it up and enjoy it. And because I loved Babel so much, I knew I wanted to pick up some of R.F. Kuang's other books, so I'm currently in the middle of listening to the audiobook of Yellowface. The voiceover me is going to give way now to camera me. But that's everything for today's video and my favourites of last year, and I'm currently hoping to film the books that I really want to get to in 2025. But I hope you all really enjoyed today's video, and let me know which book was your favourite of last year as well. Thank you again for watching, and I can't wait to make new memories with you guys in the new year. Bye friends!